is temporary. They believe they own it, not us.
Absolutely, and we're seeing more places masking back up. We were talking even last night. My wife had gone to Home Depot to pick up some stuff for the house, and they were telling her that, that company policy is back now. They've had enough people to, I guess, test positive for COVID that they have to be back in masks. And I mean, whenever you go to Target or Walmart or any of those places, you're seeing a lot more of it as well.
Yeah.
So I think the face mask side of what we do is coming back. So it's definitely not over.
Well, I hope people remember that. I'm going to go ahead and go through my calendar, and then you're going to get an introduction.
Sorry.
Quite all right. So this Sunday, June 26th, we have a medical freedom rally from 2 to 4 at Shaw and Clovis Avenue. Good group of people out there. They're passionate. It's typically been 25 or 30 people. Most of the people driving by are pretty receptive. But like we just said, all this medical freedom stuff, it isn't over. Don't kid yourself. If the government can tell you what to do whenever it wants, by the way, healthy people, because isolating people and having rules when somebody's actually sick, long-standing years and years of law about that. But it's tyranny when they begin to tell you what to do when you're completely healthy. Don't forget that. So I would encourage you to make it out there. This is here in Clovis, 2 to 4, Shaw and Clovis Avenue, Medical Freedom Rally. Tuesday night, Kingsburg group of Constitutionalists for California is having a meeting at 6:30 p.m. at Memorial Park in Kingsburg. They're going to do pizza and just kind of approach it a different way. They're not going to be at the church. They're going to be out there just kind of meeting the community. And I think all of us grassroots people need to remember, we need to go out, we need to talk to our community, we need to try to get them to be involved. Not all of them are going to become strong members, but if they think of you in a positive way and they understand that what you're trying to do is help preserve their freedoms, they're going to be a lot more receptive. And we need to make those outreach attempts. Thursday night, that is, that would be June, well, it's the Clovis chapter of Constitutionalists for California. Somehow I did not put the date. That is the 30th. We are having a meeting at 408 4th Street at the American Legion Hall in Old Town Clovis. Hope you make one of those events. If it's not one of those events, there's always things going on. You need to take those opportunities to get out there, find your group, and defend freedom. Today, as I mentioned, I'm joined by somebody that is a founder, kind of instrumental in starting the grassroots rolling, Jimmy Malloy. Tell me about your group.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in today. I do appreciate the opportunity to come in and just kind of talk about what we've got going on in Tulare County. Tulare County obviously is a little smaller than Fresno, as we were talking about off the air. We are probably a little more conservative at this point than Fresno County is. And so there is maybe a glimmer of hope, maybe a little brighter glimmer of hope that we hold on to in some of those South Valley counties. And, really Unmasked Tulare County started right about a year ago. It was really started by my wife. I came on after the fact. She's shout out to my wife too, Marilyn. Love you, appreciate you. And she was going through COVID, like all of us were, and we were having to go into stores. This was probably May or so of 21. And so a lot of places you'd walk into Target and they'd still have you masked up. And she was just getting more and more frustrated with the lack of logic in the way that this stuff was being treated. And all of us were, but she said, Jimmy, I'm going to start like a Facebook group, because every time I go to Target or Walmart or wherever and I'm not wearing my mask, there's always somebody who comes up to me and, we kind of have this connection. It's like we make eye contact and we're like, yeah, I know that you're one of my people, and vice versa. And so in having those kind of conversations, she says, I really believe there's a lot of us out here. Maybe we should just start a Facebook group and see where it goes. And we can share resources as far as, these are the places that you can patronize that are friendly to our way of thinking, and just kind of a way to have a little community of people who were like-minded. And so that's kind of where it started. And so she fires this up one day starts the group, and she says, Jimmy, I probably need some help managing this thing. And I said, okay, I'll come on under one condition. If we're going to have a group of people who are just going to complain and are just going to post memes and are just going to, have a social media presence but not actually do anything, then I'm out. I want nothing to do with that.
Right.
If we're going to form a group of people who are going to, maybe organize and try to make a legitimate difference, go and attend the school board meetings, actually form the relationships we need to form to have a difference. If we're going to do the things, then I will be involved in this. And she says, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. So we started out just, with 40 people or something in our Facebook group. Timing kind of worked out the way it did. It was shortly after we started the group that the announcement was made that kids were going to be going back to school in masks. And so that fired up a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And we realized that, the group was growing, like exponentially it was growing. All of a sudden it was, up over 1,000 people in just a few days. And then, we started approaching 2,000, and we realized our reach, just on Facebook alone wasn't going to be good enough. So we branched out into other types of social media like Telegram. We started a YouTube channel so people who didn't have Facebook could see some of our videos and things that we would do online. And we really just decided, we said, medical freedom is really important to us. And we realized we were never trying to say that you could not wear a mask. We weren't saying, we wanted to push to where masks were banned or not allowed. And when it came to vaccines, it was the same way. It's not something where we're saying, oh, you shouldn't get the vaccine, although a lot of our members definitely believe that way. But
but you should have informed consent.
That's
and they're only
thing.
They're telling it's all unicorn farts and lollipops.
Right, absolutely.
And it's not.
And I'm sure you've seen it, but like my wife was able to get a copy of the little pamphlet that goes with the Moderna shot, and it's blank. The only words on that thing, and I mean that's the little packet that you get whenever you get a new pharmaceutical drug or something, and it's it's huge. It's this giant sheet of paper that has all of your possible side effects and issues and what's in it and what's not and all that kind of stuff. Well, the Moderna vaccine version of this thing is completely blank except for about 6 places on it where it says the words intentionally blank. And so we looked at things like that and we're like, where is the informed consent when it comes to this kind of stuff? And the fact that it's being forced down everyone's throat. And when it comes to school districts, now you've got teachers who are not choosing to get that vaccine, who are suddenly having to test weekly in order to simply do their job. Like there's just madness in all this. But my point was that, we are about personal choice, personal freedom, the liberty to be able to make your own medical decisions on your own based on the research you've done, what is best for your family and your situation. And so, we've been called anti-mask, anti-vaccine, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, you're not going to catch me wearing a mask, or I'm not going to get the vaccine. I don't shame or tell anybody that they're excluded from our group because they've made a different choice than I have. And we have plenty of people who are in those situations. So it's really about the freedom side of things. It's about the liberty to be able to make those decisions for yourself.
But that is uniquely American.
Absolutely.
Because of our Constitution,
yeah.
Because of our inalienable rights.
Right.
If they were just rights that came from government, then wouldn't government be able to take them away at any point?
Yeah. And that's the role that they are attempting to play on the government side as they move more towards a Marxist philosophy and something that is anti-American. Mm-hmm. So anyway, one of the things that was interesting about Unmask is, once we got to the place specifically back in March where the mask requirement disappeared for schools, a lot of people were asking, well, what happens to Unmasked Tulare County now that there's no mask requirement? And I would tell them what happened that was interesting to me. And again, we're just parents. We've not been activists. We've not been, I would say that we're relatively informed, but I would say that we woke up during COVID to the fact that there was a lot more going on than what the average person like ourselves were understanding. I mean, we had our kids, we've got 2 boys, we're living our lives, we're doing our best to keep our head above water in California and just live our lives the best way we know how. And, we didn't spend a whole lot of time and energy in understanding what was going on. And the interesting part to me was that as we went in and we fought for things like medical freedom, mask choice, vaccine choice, it just really it was almost like the floodgates opened as far as our vision into seeing what was actually going on in government and to see how corrupt and how far removed we are from the original intent of America. And, it's really just been eye-opening to me as somebody who's relatively new in all of this stuff and trying to play catch up, to be honest. Like, for example, we're doing a Constitution 101 class from Hillsdale.
Oh, I love Hillsdale.
Yeah, Hillsdale's
I plug
amazing.
Hillsdale all the time.
Yeah, so what we decided to do, we realized that a lot of the people within our group, I'm looking at posts, I'm looking at conversations, listening to people, and I'm like, we make arguments, and I think a lot of times we make arguments that are kind of uneducated. We have our talking points, maybe the things that someone is saying that we're following on social media or the podcast we're listening to. But when it comes to my actual knowledge of the Constitution and how things need to be run, I realized like I'm lacking in that. And I knew that if I was in that situation, probably most of the people in our group were in that situation too. So we put it out there and we said, look, we're going to host this at our home. We're going to do the videos, up on the screen and, take the quizzes and all that. But more than that, we're going to have the conversations.
Which is way more important.
It is. And that's what we found is that, the videos are amazing. The content is phenomenal. And I've grown so much as a person since we're like on module 8 now in that course. But it's the conversations that we've been able to have. And the fact that we were able to take a look at, okay, this is the stuff that the founders were dealing with. These were the concerns they had, the problems they had, the process they were going through, the people who were standing against them. And realizing how much things just come full circle and they're cyclical in society. And we were looking at this stuff and we're like, they were dealing with some of the same kind of things that we're dealing with now. And even talking about slavery and all that, when you have the rise of people the South who were pro-slavery and all that, it was the same almost sort of mindset, probably exaggerated now, but they were, up against some of the same kind of things. And it's just been a really interesting, it's been an interesting journey and a super educational journey. And I'm not pretending to be a constitutional scholar, but I do appreciate the fact that we're able to actually learn from somebody like an organization like Hillsdale, who's putting out free content for anybody who would just take the time to do it.
I have a suggestion. Have you ever watched the Non-Compliance movie by Chris Ann Hall?
I've not seen that one.
Okay, I'll send you that.
Okay.
I think that is very useful and your group should watch that.
Okay.
It talks about how, with interweaving the Constitution, how rights are set up and where they start. And how the individual is what created the local government, which created the state government, which created the federal government, and kind of gives you the hierarchy of all of it and makes you think about, well, wait a minute, the individual is the most important thing.
Right.
But we've gotten away from that.
Right.
The left thoroughly believes that the state is the most important thing, and it can even tell you what to think. Rather than standing on principle, it's, well, I have to stand with my tribe.
Right. And I feel like that's one of the big differences between then and now, right? They kind of operated from the foundation, like our founders operated from the foundational belief that the role of government was to secure rights for the individual who was the ultimate power in the world, or the ultimate authority, I should say. But, now it's like the roles are flipped to where, government is the authority in the minds of many. And, man exists to serve their purposes. And it's just interesting that there's been a fundamental shift in a large segment of society that we're not starting from that place where man is the ultimate authority, where man has inalienable rights given to him by his creator. And it's kind of an interesting, almost social observation in how quickly you can slide downhill when you abandon those principles.
Right. Well, if you view the world in a place which the left used to do, where the individual right was more important than anything else, and there's where I would actually say that I'm with Thomas Jefferson, who was thought of as on the left. He saw the individual rights as the most important thing, and then the role of government is protecting those individual rights. In today's world, that would sound like a crazy conservative, but back then things were a little different.
Sure.
I do think we need both the right and the left. But as we talk about the left in today's world, where it's all about group rights, defining yourself as part of a tribe, and almost worshiping government as opposed to worshiping God.
Sure. I would even say it's worshiping self, right? There's a humanistic side of this that's what I see. And, as I've been looking at a variety of things, like, trying to find solutions. This is one of the things that I struggle with, and it keeps me up at night. As far as, our primary focus or our lane has been in the schools. And so I'm looking at school districts and I'm thinking, okay, in the public school system, like, what is the solution to get us back to where we need to be? And of course, you're looking at, okay, where did we go wrong? And what I see is in all of these issues that seem to be popping up in school, whether it's curriculum, whether it's, sexual, comprehensive sexual education, critical race theory, even social emotional learning, like all of this stuff that is problematic in the public school system. It seems like it's all, like, everything is geared more towards almost worship of self. Like you don't have a healthy view of God, that there's something bigger than you out there. It's almost an atheistic type thing. And I feel like what we're seeing now is the result of when you don't have a value system that is rooted in something that's bigger than you, when you are the master of your own universe, when you are the one who is responsible for, everything, when you are the one who is the main aim in your life is to make yourself happy. If it's,
as opposed to accountable for your responsibilities.
Yeah. So, I live my life and I feel like every decision that I make, I'm accountable to God Almighty for that decision, those decisions that we make. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I believe that, when I was born again, I surrendered that, decision-making aspect of my life to Christ. And so he's the one who guides and determines my life. Any of this stuff that we've been doing, it's because we've felt like the Lord has directed us in this situation. I try not to do anything that is just made up out of my own mind or my ideals. And I'm not perfect at that, but that's the way, that's the worldview that I have necessarily. It's something that's bigger than me. And it's one of those things that is difficult for me to understand, is when somebody's the master of their own universe, when there's nothing bigger than them that is rooted in on the rock, basically, if it's shifting sand and all these things. And that's what I see in the modern day left, is that, how do you have a firm conviction? How do you have a firm set of morals or a sense of morality when everything shifts based on the perception of what's going on in the world, or even perception of who you are?
The current thing.
Even we talk about gender identity and stuff like that. It's like, how I feel today is who I am. And I can't understand going through life that way. And I think I see the unraveling of society as a large result of the fact that we have replaced God with ourselves and almost a humanistic worldview. And then, really as human beings, we have, we used to call it in youth ministry a God-shaped hole that's in your heart. Like, everybody has this. And instead of allowing God to inhabit his own place in a person's heart, we have to replace it with something. And so what people are replacing it with at this point is government. And, that's a sad state of affairs, because there's nothing solid enough to base your entire life on in government. And people are just being led astray.
Well, they've created a culture of unaccountability.
Sure.
We're going to go ahead and go to a break.
Sure.
This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to all of my online viewers. Subscribe if you like what I'm doing. Try to have real conversations that bring light to issues. Hopefully, we don't just spend a bunch of time complaining. There's a lot to complain about, but it's not useful to just complain. Hopefully, it moves you towards action. At the very least, can you talk to your family and your neighbors about your values? Even if they're not values that agree with mine, having that discussion will make it. I would hope it would go beyond that. You'd go out, you'd find your group, you'd get involved. When we come back, and we're going to go ahead and come back, this is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Today, I am joined by a founder of Unmask Tulare County, Jimmy Malloy. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I think there's some critical things to say about the whole culture of unaccountability that the left seems to be fostering. You know, you're only accountable if they say so. The rule of law doesn't matter. A great example would be, boy, we gotta just get those insurrectionists that January 6th
Right.
showed up and really did some damage. And if they went in and did damage, and then okay. But they're not even allowing those people to go see a court. Instead, they want to make a public spectacle about it.
Sure.
On the other hand, you look at BLM, who burned down government buildings, private buildings, a bunch of cops got killed, a bunch of bystanders got killed, a whole bunch of people got beaten and stabbed and severely hurt. And our
Property
vice president,
damage.
yeah, and our
Right.
vice president was raising funds to get those people out of jail immediately.
Right.
And there's been no accountability. Another place, because schools are one of your focuses, is critical race theory. I believe is a culture of unaccountability. I also believe it's racist because it sees race first,
Absolutely.
but it's a culture of unaccountability. If you're white, you're guilty, but if you're another race, then you're just a victim.
Right.
Neither one is actually in a way able to fix that problem.
It's a lose-lose.
Yeah,
right,
it's a
for
lose-lose.
everybody. Yeah.
To be seen as, because you're of some color, as something less, which is racist, because, you know, color's only skin deep.
Right.
And I wish that equity and their fight for equity was more than skin deep, because I truly believe that those that are disadvantaged should have a hand up. But that doesn't necessarily have to do with race. It might, and if it does, we address it in that instance. But helping those that are disadvantaged, that's totally different than, oh well, I'm of a certain color, I'm disadvantaged. Really, you're going to tell me that Barack Obama's kids don't have more advantage than I will ever see?
Right.
Come on, it's not that simple, folks.
Right. You can't put a blanket over everybody and say that everybody is the same just because of the color of their skin, for example, right? Or any other socioeconomical disadvantage that a person might have. And one of the issues that I see with equity is that I feel like, you know, the only logical outcome for that is that we're going to appeal to the lowest common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
And so you drag everybody down to the lowest common denominator to ensure that everyone has an equal outcome. And I mean, if that isn't un-American, I don't know what is. People flee other countries in order to come here and find the exact opposite of that. And yet that's what's being pushed.
Because they want that opportunity. They want equality of opportunity.
Sure.
And they know if they come and they work their butt off, and I know a ton of first-generation Americans that have come and done just that and have had pretty successful lives.
Sure. But there's a difference there, obviously, between equality of opportunity and this buzzword equity.
Right.
And so, you know, redefining terms, which is something the progressives do often, but, you know, turning that concept of equality into the concept of equity is not only dangerous, it's wrong, it's, in my opinion, illegal. It's, you know, it will contribute to the destruction of our society, which maybe is the point. I mean, I don't know. But
the hard left, I regularly hear them when I listen to their speeches and things talk about tearing down the foundation of what makes us American.
Which is really what critical theory is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's critical race theory or any other theory, it's understanding, or it's approaching life through the lens of being critical and saying what we have is evil. What we have was founded in evil. It was injustice then, it's injustice now, and we have to correct it. We have to fix it. So it's an attempt to fundamentally change the greatest nation in the history of the world. And so that is incredibly frustrating. And, you know, the fact that there's such a stronghold within a really bloated bureaucratic government is discouraging, to say the least.
It is discouraging. But I want to point out that why would people be running here if we were so bad?
Why would people be running
Running
to the country?
To the country.
Oh,
coming
no.
legally, illegally, any way they can get here.
And that's the falsehood of the argument, right? That's where it all falls apart, because you don't have people leaving the country in droves because we're such an evil place to live. As on the opposite side, they are coming into the country desperately looking to get here, so there's an opportunity for them to have equality of opportunity. And so, I mean, when you just look at that, you see that, okay, the argument that America is evil is obviously false, just based on who wants to be here and who doesn't. Even the people who hate it the most, they're not lining up to get out of here.
Well, all those that promised to leave when Trump got elected that first time.
Right.
What happened?
I can remember different people saying, I will charter the planes. I will pay for you to go wherever in the world you want to go. And to my knowledge, nobody ever took them up on that.
Right. And even if there were one or two, there were hundreds that I'm aware of that said that.
Sure.
Including some relatives. And unfortunately, they didn't go.
Right. And I think it's easy to make those kind of statements from the lifestyle that we live in America, right? So in the grand scheme of things, we're comfortable when you look at other countries and even in the history of the world. You know, we have more wealth and more opportunity and more comfort here in America than anybody ever has. And so I feel like it's easy to make those kind of statements. It's easy to develop a mindset that is unappreciative of what we have here because we've never known anything different. Like, I think of Middle Eastern countries a lot of times, and I'm like, you know, you talk about tolerance, you talk about, you know, all of these things that we go for here. If you were in a Middle Eastern country, you know, talking about those kind of things, like some of them would cut your heads off just for having the conversations that you're having. And so, you know, I think there's a disconnect between a lot of our ideas of what the world looks like and what's actually happening in the rest of the world.
Well, I love how the left likes to talk about the one percenters. Do they realize if we looked at the United States in an economic sense, almost every single American is in the one percenter category when we compare to the world?
Sure.
You only got to be at, I think it's about $30,000.
Yeah.
To be in the 1% for the world.
Which is considered poverty here.
Right.
Absolutely. But I mean, even those who are worse off here, you know, there are many who still have cell phones, have big screen TVs, have water, have electricity, you know, have a car. Yeah, all of those things, right? So even when if you're doing really bad in America, you're still doing really well as opposed to, you know, the rest of the world, or certain places
almost
in the
all
world.
of it anyway.
Certain places for sure, yeah.
I wanted to go ahead and transition. We just had an LGBT event and kind of a counter event because I think they've gone too far.
Yeah.
I think they've lost their ever-loving minds. Yeah. We've got a couple clips. Jeremy, can we do clip 3?
Their type of religion and life is centered around control and centered around Christian supremacy. And so they need to be in control. And even though they're very loud and they're very active, there's a lot of them over there, I hear, they are a growing minority. They're getting smaller and smaller. The world is evolving and they're stuck, and that's why they're mad. And the world is evolving because of so many brave advocates and lovers and people before us who chose to be themselves, and for people like you out there who are choosing to be yourselves and choosing your own divinity and the divinity of this world, the divinity of community here over the fear. And really, what I don't think they're afraid of us. I think they're afraid of themselves and their God, because their structure is built to be afraid of their God. And when you're looking for divinity or peace, I don't understand how that could be helpful or wanted by any of them. They talk of concern for family members when they're the ones that kick family members out. They're the ones that make us deal with the trauma of being estranged from our parents or knowing they're disappointed in us. So I feel like they have a lot of nerve talking about being family friendly.
Yeah. Wow.
She said a lot there that kind of just confirmed what you said earlier about who they worship.
Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to ultimately. As she was talking, I'm thinking in my head about Romans chapter 1. Romans 1:21 says, yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. They began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. And I could read through the rest of this passage, but it really talks over and over again about man choosing to elevate himself, it refusing to acknowledge that there is a God, refusing to acknowledge him as God, and instead elevating himself into those positions. And over again throughout that passage, it says God gave them over to their desires. God gave them over to the things, the images that they'd built up of themselves in their own minds. And I really, really feel like that's where we are with a large segment of society. And I think in one sense, she is right, that there is a growing number of people who are accepting the message that is being put out there by this community, this LGBTQ community. And they've done a really good job at infiltrating school systems, public education, large corporations, Disney. You have all of
whose
these.
stock is down 50%.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the natural. It's the only way that can go, right? So they had this huge movie, Lightyear, which was the Buzz Lightyear prequel. And the biggest thing that I heard about this going into the release of this movie is that they had inserted a homosexual kiss into the beginning of the movie. And so this is something that goes viral. This is a Toy Story movie.
Right.
Like, I have kids. I've got 2 boys, and they're teenagers, and one just turned 18. But I mean, I can remember going through the Toy Story franchise, and I can tell you this, that most parents do not take their kids to go see a Toy Story movie because they want to see some homosexual kiss on camera. And so just the ideology that's getting shoved down our throats by Disney, and I mean, they're just one example of things, but they have a huge impact on kids, obviously. But the scary part to me is listening to people talk about what's going on in our schools. And so we've known for a long time that higher education has been just infiltrated by this kind of craziness, right? We've kind of we've understood that for a long time. I talked to I have a senior who just graduated, so he's no longer a senior, I guess. But he in Tulare, and we would talk about, okay, what are you seeing at school when it comes to things like non-binary classmates, people who are identifying as bisexual or transgender or any of that kind of stuff. He says, oh yeah, there's a lot of them. It's probably, in certain classes, there might be 20 or 30% that are changing their pronouns or are, that's not saying 20 or 30% are transgender, but, are falling into some classification that would be in the LGBTQ community umbrella, I suppose.
That's because they want to be part of the cool group.
And that's exactly what it is. And, when you have social media influencers, when you have giant corporations, when you have school districts and even ASB clubs who are having events out in the, middle of the quad at lunch saying, hey, we're doing pride this, we're doing pride that, come make your own unicorn, blah, blah, blah. And so, this is what's being pushed on kids. And, they're high school kids. Like, who doesn't want to be accepted and loved? Who doesn't want to have some sort of recognition for something? And if we're outwardly just saying, hey, if you are part of this community, we're going to celebrate you. We're going to, make sure that you are not marginalized. We're going to make sure that you are, able to live your true life. Like, when you have a lot of kids who are struggling with identity anyway, they're trying to figure out who they are, which is what teenagers do.
Right.
They're trying to figure out who they are. And this is being shoved down their throats and saying, look, if you maybe don't fit in, if you're not the jock, if you're not the popular kid, if you're not the one who, is naturally gifted at this and that, well, then you're probably a part of this marginalized community. And we will celebrate you if you just acknowledge that. Obviously, you're going to have a large percentage of people who are going to step into that. And if you tell me that there are 20, 30% in a fairly conservative part of the state that are identifying somewhere along that spectrum, I would say, what's the real number? And what we're seeing now over and over again, because this movement has been around for a while now, is you're seeing that there's real injury, there's real harm that's being done to kids who have been told one thing, who've been sold a bill of goods. Maybe they've started taking hormone blockers. Maybe they've had the surgeries. Maybe they've experienced sexually with different things that they wouldn't have otherwise. And there's real harm that comes from that, as they realize later, maybe I'm not a woman. And crap, I did all that stuff that I probably shouldn't have done. And there's a whole bunch of regret. There's groups that are built entirely on support groups for people who are detransitioning or who made those mistakes in high school or college or whatever. But here's the concerning part, is that I have a junior higher as well. And so talking to people who are on his campus, he was an 8th grader this year, but talking to teachers and staff members and people, we'd say, what's what's going on there? And we try to keep a good pulse with different teachers at different age levels just to kind of feel what's going on. And they said the same thing. There's this huge movement of kids who are saying that they're gay, for example. They said we've got tons of boys who are walking around at lunch and on breaks holding hands. And, you know, it's cool. This is what one person told me, is it's cool to be gay at this point. And so even down to the junior high level now, we're seeing this become a bigger and bigger thing. And fortunately, at least among the people that I've talked to who are in elementary, it's more of an outlying thing in Tulare and in Tulare County. You don't see it as often in the elementary schools. But when it comes to the policies and the pushes that are happening from California Department of Education or even Washington National Department of Education, you know, the intent there is to definitely let that extend down to kindergarten and even transitional kindergarten. And so it's just it's a wild world that we live in when it comes to public education, and it's no longer just the secondary education or the universities where you're seeing all this craziness.
No, absolutely. Jeremy, we're going to go ahead and play clip 4 and go ahead and follow it with 5.
You know, there are some loud, angry, ugly people that are saying hateful things, but there's so many more beautiful people like yourself supporting us. So I really do appreciate that. I just kind of was overwhelmed by the hate messages, the death threats. This is the kind of first time I've been receiving this. And for a while I kind of said, you know, I didn't sign up for this. But after sleeping on it, I realized this is exactly what I signed up for, because I'm not going to back down. They say in messages a lot, why now? Why can't you just stay in the clubs? Where are you all coming from? We've been here. We're just not afraid of you anymore. Got it? Any of the LGBTQ youth, anybody that has not come out yet, anybody that might be the child of some of these horrible parents, you have a family right here waiting for you.
And I'm going to say that love kind of showed up early this morning when these folks were getting ready to go over there and start spewing their hate in thunder and lightning and hail. Did they get the message? I don't know. Being queer, being a lesbian, Christian, minister, faith leader, potty mouth, tattooed, all of it. My button says Jesus would slap the out of you. People have left my church because of me. That's okay. I've been kicked out of church because of me. That's okay too.
Yeah. It's interesting that that last clip was a pastor, right?
Right.
And you know, we're seeing this more and more in, you know, various denominations who are deciding to come alongside this movement and ordaining, you know, gay, lesbian, transgender ministers, things along those lines. You know, I'm assuming she's a Christian pastor, or at least allegedly a Christian pastor.
I think allegedly.
Based on what she said. But I would say, what gospel are you preaching? I mean, that's what I would be almost interested to hear a sermon and understand, like, where from Scripture are you even teaching? Like, how far do you have to twist the unchanging Word of God to align with your religion? It's a different. That's what this stuff is. This is a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just simply a way of thinking. This is a religion to these people.
And did you notice in the first clip they talked about, well, will be your family?
Yeah. Well,
So,
exactly. Absolutely. And that's what I'm talking about. So you have people who, kids especially, and then that first clip, he aimed that comment at young people, right? He said, students, if you are still in the closet, you know, you have a family in us that will support you. And, you know, this is, you take a group of people, like I said, who are trying to find identity, in a lot of cases struggling to find identity. And I think the stars align a little bit, even in the post-COVID world, if we're saying we're post-COVID. But, you know, in coming out of all of that, with the shutdowns, with the masks, with all of these, you can take the aggregate of all of these things and you realize just how big of an issue we have emotionally and mentally, you know, in our students and in our kids. So kids that have naturally for forever, you know, struggled to maybe find their identity in their teenage years, now that's been amplified because of what we've done to them over the last 2 years.
right.
And so it presents an opportunity for people to step in and hijack a time in a student's life where they're trying to find themselves, and someone to say, well, this must be what you are because you're struggling, or this must be who you are because maybe you're not seeing eye to eye with your parents, or you don't fit into that social group or whatever.
Well, but that's for the history of mankind.
Yeah.
There's been that struggle.
Absolutely.
And kids don't see eye to eye with their parents for a while.
Right.
That's normal.
It is.
You're right. Everything's been amplified. The group that I see still to this day that are least vulnerable, that are wearing masks the most, which I believe they have the right to do it, but I find it a bit crazy that here I'm seeing high school kids wearing masks, and I don't believe that you can be fully human and wear a mask all the time and interact with people, because so much of the way we communicate is through body language.
Yeah.
So they're allowed to, because of the mask, I shouldn't say, I guess allowed to is okay. They have the opportunity to communicate, but it's only partial.
Yeah.
We don't really know the full truth. Somewhere around 60 to 70%, depends on where you look, of communication that happens between people is actually not the word spoken.
Nonverbal.
It is the nonverbal cues, the body language.
Yeah.
And the mask hides, 20% of that? And some of the most key parts of that.
At least. And I would even argue that it changes the way the rest of your body functions. And one of the reasons I would say that is, we've attended our local Tulare City School Board meetings regularly for the last year. And they were masked up all the way up until that date in March when the governor lifted the mandate. So, and I can tell you more about this in a little bit.
Okay,
but
we're going to go ahead and go to break
okay.
again. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Been an interesting discussion today. I hope people hear this one, because I think this kind of, in a nutshell, talks about some of the very real problems we're having. Today, let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today I am joined by a Tulare County resident, a guy that decided he needed to get involved and make a difference, largely from the prodding of his wife.
Right. Absolutely.
Always good to have a good woman to back you up.
Definitely.
And he is one of the founders of Unmask Tulare County. And we're kind of discussing masks a little bit, how they change your psychology. As we wind down, because we're down to about 6.5 minutes, I do want to focus on hope. So let's go ahead and finish your point about masks.
Yeah. So all I was going to say was that when it comes to body language and expressing and how a mask really impacts or negatively impacts how you communicate to others, going to our school board meetings for over a year, we've seen the majority of that year done behind masks. And what I found was that I was getting really frustrated with our board members because they didn't really talk much. They would listen to what the superintendent said, they would make a motion, they would second, they would pass, and that was almost the extent of the discussion. And I remember the first meeting that happened after the masks came off. And it was almost like a complete 180. It was full of life. There was a lot of discussion. There was, almost some jovialness to the people who were in the room. And I went up during public comment and I said, I want you guys to understand that there has been a difference. And the only thing that changed was that the masks came off of you. So it's not just the 3/4 of your face that's covered up. It's your entire, I know if I ever had to wear one, I don't want to talk. I don't want to be, I'm trying to just focus on breathing, And so your whole just countenance changes. Everything about you kind of changes. And that was a really an eye-opening thing for me when it came to just how much that actually impacts you as a person.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I think it's you're talking about nonverbal communication and it's huge. And the masks definitely do more than just cover that little portion of your face.
Well, they allow people that are upset to hide what's going on. So then you don't have a conversation about it. So then you can't ever address it.
Yeah.
Think of the number of times where you knew somebody was incredibly upset, but what if they were able to hide it behind the mask? Now they only have to hide a little bit and they can get away with going, well, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't see more, so you can't really know for sure whether it's fine. I
Right.
think that all of this COVID tyranny, and I'm going to call it COVID tyranny, all of the mandates, all of the stomping on our freedoms, couldn't go to church, couldn't go to a bar. Now, I don't go to bars, but hey, that's your place.
Yeah.
Couldn't sing in church.
Right.
All of it was intentional. It was an attempt to move us towards what Governor Newsom said was a more progressive type of capitalism.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the beginnings. But even King Newsom said it. So I don't know what to do about that, but we definitely need to stand strong. If you want to wear a mask, I'm going to shake my head. If you're young and healthy and you're wearing a mask, I'm really going to shake my head. And I'm going to have a hard time taking you seriously, but I do believe you have the right.
Sure. You do. And there's a difference there between you have the right to do it and it being healthy, right? And that's another conversation for another day. But definitely, yeah, you should have the ability to do so if you choose.
We're down to about 3.5 minutes.
Okay.
Why would you do all this? Obviously, you believe that a better future is in front of us.
Yeah.
So why are you hopeful?
And even to add to that question, why are you still in California, right? That's one that I get all the time. We have a lot of friends who have left and abandoned and took off and moved for greener pastures. We believe, my wife and I, that California is prime for a moral revolution or awakening, I should say. Maybe not revolution, that has a negative connotation. But I believe that we're prime for an awakening. And I think we're seeing the first fruits of that. I think that, like me, for example, I'm one of the examples of people who were just going about their lives, doing their own thing until COVID happened and we woke up. And I think what we've seen, and the encouraging part about the stuff that we've done, is seeing how many people are in that exact same boat and the number increasing. And it's frustrating right now because you see people just going back in the summer, doing their own thing. People are kind of disengaged at this point. But we've seen something, maybe a tide turning, that is positive when it comes to our local area, and I believe even in the state. And so I firmly believe that, like I said earlier, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer. I believe that we are primed and ready. If you look through revival in history, you see moments like this where things get dark and people have inside of themselves a need and a longing for something that's bigger than themselves. And you have to be at that darkest place just before the light. And I believe that that is coming and that is here, and that we're seeing the first fruits of it, and that we've only started to begin. I'm not leaving California. We're going to stay and fight. We're going to see this thing out. And the only reason for that is we believe God's going to do something huge in the state.
I would say I agree with that. I look at all the grassroots people. They tend to be Christians, but not all
Right.
of them. I know some of them that are atheists.
Sure.
You can still be a point of light, even if you're an atheist,
Right.
because their behavior is pretty good. They just don't actually have a belief in something larger than themselves, but they do have a hope and a belief in a better future. They have a hope and a belief in the specialness that is created here because of our freedom. And I truly believe that freedom is underpinned by the fact that we were a Christian nation.
Yeah.
I think we still are.
Right.
That inspired from that Christian foundation, they wrote what I consider to be one of the most amazing non-religious documents ever written, our Constitution, that enumerated our rights. They were even smart enough to give us the 9th Amendment that said, hey, if we didn't talk about this, it falls to the people.
Right.
We need to take those rights back, become educated.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? We're down to about 30 seconds.
Not really. I just, again, want to thank you for having me on. These are important discussions to have. I guess the final thought that I would have is let's learn to love people well. And when it comes to even pulling people into our movements, pulling people into the grassroots thing, one of the things that I think we as conservatives and Republicans can do better at is loving people and just for who they are in a sense, rather than what they can do for us. Like if I'm going to go to an event and try to, win people to our group, I'm not going to just try to win them to a group. I want to be interested in who they are. And so I would just encourage people, learn within all of this to love people well.
So make a personal connection first.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you for this time. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town. Would you go ahead and give information on your group?
Yeah.
We're still on Facebook Live, so
Sure.
ways that people could get in touch with you.
So we are on Facebook. We're Unmask Tulare County. You can find our official page or the private group that has all the people in it. So if you just search for Unmask Tulare County, you'll find us there. Same thing on YouTube, same thing on Instagram, same thing on Telegram. Just Unmask Tulare County is the easiest way to get a hold of us. We also have a website. It is www.unmasktularecounty.com. You can certainly reach out and find us there, and we'd love to connect with anybody.
So they don't, it's like, for instance, I'm a member of your Facebook group.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty like-minded.
Sure.
But I live in Fresno County. But I think making those connections matters because it allows us to not just change our local community, but to connect with others and change the larger area. We really have a real shot at shifting the entire Central Valley from
Yeah.
Bakersfield to about Stockton.
Absolutely. And our focus is Tulare County because we realized there was enough statewide groups and there was enough, people who were doing the large, and to be honest, the county is a large area to try to cover.
It is.
And so, that is definitely our focus. But yeah, we welcome anybody from Fresno County, Madera County. We've got Kern County. We've got over, in Monterey, just people who are like-minded, who are looking for opportunities to get connected and get involved.
Well, I thank you for this time.
Absolutely. Thank you.